Today, I have two gentlemen who come from the Pekiti-Tirsia Kali background. We have one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. I have Lamont Glass and Justin Patricio Fernando. I always butcher his name, but I've had him on before, and this will be the first time I've had Lamont on. And today we're talking about sparring. So there's a couple of things we have to talk about sparring. Sparring is one of those contentious things within the FMA community. Nobody can really agree upon rules. So today we're going to present and have an interesting discussion about different styles of rules that are utilized. So gentlemen, how's it going? Lamont, since this is your first time you're on here, let's go ahead and do a little intro of who you are, and then we'll backtrack as to our topic.
Lamont Glass. I'm a Pekiti-Tirsia Kali instructor. Kind of been doing this for Pekiti for 20 years, almost exactly now. And so it's my main Filipino martial art. I've dabbled in some other stuff, but Pekiti is really kind of my home. And then I do, within the sort of Kali community, I compete in Dog Brothers. I do some kind of dabbled in HEMA as well, competition wise, but my main home is Pekiti.
Awesome. And for you, Justin, since we're going to circle back since you've been on here before, let's see who you are and where you come from and all that fun stuff.
Hey, my name's Justin. I've been in the FMA world. I've been training since about 2002. Only really in Pekiti-Tirsia Kali. I don't really have any experience in any other arts. I don't think I've ever really tried to like really dabble into the other ones. Yeah, and been doing Muay Thai and Kali since then. Yeah, I mean, really not much.
Well, I mean, you say you haven't done a lot of FMA sparring, but you've dabbled in other forms of sparring. So for today's discussion, we can do some corollaries and some issues particular to FMA sparring as we've seen it to others. Because I mean, Lamont, you have a HEMA background as well, and I mean, Justin and I both have combat sports background, so there's some things that we can understand across the board about what sparring can do, what it's supposed to do. But the issue that we run into for this debate is like, what are the rules and what are the things that we're looking at? So first, let's go with the definition of sparring. So Lamont, can you give me a definition of sparring? And for one, like general, and then two for FMA.
Sure. Well, so I think sparring is it's a competitive learning environment. It's not, sparring is not designed to be a competition. It's designed so that you have an opportunity to learn. It can be, depending on the level of competitiveness, how much kind of that learning environment may or may not be a big part there. And then I would define that separately from competition where people are competing to win. Sparring, hopefully you're in there to learn. And that to me is the big difference.
Excellent. And what about you, Justin?
I think when it comes to sparring, there's two types of sparring, right? I think they're both acceptable. One is, like Lamont said, where your goal is not to win the specific match, right? But it could be a type of sparring where, you're setting specific rules so that you can learn a specific technique, or maybe you could drill down a specific principle. Maybe Sabayan or something like that. I mean, in that sense, you're the person that you're working with or you're training with, they could throw kind of unpredictable movements or unpredictable strikes, but in your head what kind of goal you're trying to set, which is again not winning the match, but you're trying to get your objective or your goal for that. And the same thing could be said by your partner. The other side of that, on the other way I like to look at it is very much kind of like a competitive mindset where you are trying to win the match. Not meaning like at the end of the 3-minute round where you're saying like I won, you lost type thing, but more so like you're trying to get the better of your opponent. You're trying to tag them more than they tag you, which I mean it's not necessarily winning, but it's in a way that you want to give without taking, and vice versa. But in that sense, it's also not something where it's a specific match where you win something at the end or you lose something at the end. It's just both ways. I like both ways really, especially the competition kind of mindset against that too.
Gotcha. So it's more of an intellectual exercise and an exploration of movement and tactics and concepts, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be very much like you could keep the rules specific, right? Meaning like if you want to only do long distance sparring or close distance, or like you could keep it within a realm, and that's the beauty about sparring, right? Is that you could change the rule set for any specific match on any specific day with anyone, right? Yeah.
What about you, Lamont? What do you think?
Well, I totally agree. I mean, there's if you're going to focus on a particular element, so we'll sometimes do various kind of games or constrained sparring where one person has a particular strategy. You're working your break in. Other person, and we'll literally do draw from a hat. This is what I'm doing this round. We may do stuff. This is what I'm doing this round, and this is my weapon. I have to 4-wall block before I can hit you back, right? So I'm working on my defense, and so we'll do some of this stuff, and you don't tell the other person what your game is, and then the other person is like, I got to work my Florete entry to come in here, and like those are fairly ridiculous, and we don't do that very often because that's like too constrained, but it makes for a fun exercise of, wow, how am I going to make 4-wall blocking work, against this person who like got a strategy about thrusting, like, and so there's half the element is trying to figure out what the other person's doing. That's like overly rule specific. And again, we don't do that a lot, but you can do that stuff all the time. Like, I want you to attack with attacking blocks. I want you to be, I want you to crash either Pyong or 4-wall. I don't care. I want you to get to close quarter, and I want you to touch his face with your left hand. So again, all those things may be used, and again, it's a learning environment. And if you fail, who cares? That's, you failed. It's not a big deal. And I think and most of this stuff is it's the ego, about being comfortable about not about losing. And that's hopefully the good thing about martial arts is like, I can fail at this because this is how I learn. And again, that's the whole point of sparring.
Which is interesting because there's this consistent debate between sparring and pressure testing, when the fact is they're really both the same thing, because you're literally testing concepts, techniques, tactics underneath a situation of an adverse reaction or an adversarial situation where you got a person actively resisting against you. So when people think pressure testing, they're thinking like combatives and fighting and the aspect of the high lethality stuff. But pressure testing could be like, heck, can I pull this concept off when I have somebody coming at me? So
it could be pressure testing could actually be both ways if you think about you could use, say, pressure testing in the sparring concept where you don't know what attack is coming next or at what timing or what speed, but then on the other side, you could very well drill like we drill sometimes wall drills where one person's pinned against the wall and you're just trying to thrust away with a knife, right? So in the sense that this is kind of where you're stuck, you're in between the person and the wall and they're thrusting or slashing techniques. That's very kind of segmented right there, but it could be pressure because you don't know how fast they're going, how speed, so it could be both ways. I find that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the thing that I find what is common here is it's goal oriented. Rules-based sparring from a combat sports background is what we call technical sparring, where we're working a specific concept, technique, or tactic. And I think with FMA, we constantly argue about language. and without the uniformity of what is the language match and the concept, technique, and the goal, that does lead to a bit of conflict. So when we can say that technical sparring is situational sparring, which is limited rule sparring, and people have that same understanding across the board, I think it's one way that we can break down walls. Because what does technical sparring mean to either one of you? Lamont, let's start with you.
So technical sparring to me is usually lower contact. It's dialed back to accomplishing a hit, but we may not have the power involved. The power involved there. There may not just simply be the intensity. So we've dialed things way back, and typically that's the way I'd address that. Is you'd see this fast, fluid. For most of what I see is fast and fluid. We're going to touch. And I'm not really trying to get an impact. All the range should be there, all the timing should be there, but you're not going to see the power involved. So that's usually the way we'd involve that.
And what about you, Justin?
Very similar on the technical side. We usually like to just keep it kind of very goal oriented. At a fault, I'm not a fan of that. My students, they like it, and they go ahead with technical sparring from time to time, and they always tell me I should really encourage technical sparring. But me, I'm like, I'm always like, I just kind of like have that goal in your own head and then just try it, like try it that match, don't let the guy know what you're doing. But then some it works in some ways and some doesn't, right? But yeah, very much when it comes to the technical side, technical sparring, very goal oriented, or very within a bubble. Like you're only allowed to do kind of like this kind of power, this kind of speed, this range, and you're trying it on your own time.
It's interesting. So since both of you are PTK guys, and we have a wide variety of viewers that will watch live and later, what is some of the unified methodologies for sparring within PTK? From both your guys' experiences. This is a loaded question, though.
I don't think there's a unified anything, even within PTK. So my first introduction to sparring, well, not my first introduction. I've learned, sort of technical sparring from Tuan Tim Wade, and that's kind of a totally different animal, right? You start with distance sparring. Literally, the first time I saw that, I had a guy swing at me. We're 8 feet away, and he's like, "I'm hitting your arm." I'm like, "No, you're not." Like, I didn't know what I was looking at. Like, that's not the fault of the methodology. I literally I had come up in an environment where you're hitting each other. Like, to me, that was sparring, and I did not understand this distance sparring as a training tool, and I literally just did not understand it at all. Later, okay, I got it. And it can be useful. I don't find it super useful for me. So I'd like contact when I talk about technical sparring that way. I find that far more useful. We just go low intensity sparring or fast and light is far more useful to me. But so that's an example of a version where they use that as an introduction. The nice thing is you can do that with live blades, and you're doing that as distance, right? And as they get better, those guys get a lot closer. You'll see high level guys can play live blade with that. It takes a ton of control, and everything else like that. But it's a way of using your real tool at real time. Again, not super useful to me, and I don't do that. But that's a version of sparring. So that's kind of one extreme, and the other extreme is, let's go and you've learned a bunch of Kali. Here's your stick. Here's your mask. Here's your gloves. Go, right? And that'd be the other end, and go really hard. And that is kind of, I think, the way we started off. Duan, Jason, and I, way back when, 20 years ago, watching Dog Brothers tapes, and like, that's what they're doing, so we should do something similar, and then kind of getting better at it from there. So that's the opposite extreme. And then in the middle, there's tons of gradations of people who are, nowadays the gears available to do fast and relatively good impact, but you have enough protection that you're comfortable and people don't freak out about it. Or padded stick sparring, or I don't think there is a unified anything in Pekiti. And you have instructors that don't spar, or functionally don't spar in terms on a widespread scale. So yeah, I can't say there's anything unified about our approach.
Gotcha. What about you, Justin?
I don't think I don't think that there is any unified way, even within the specific system of Pekiti. What's important is that, outside of the system, you just find a group or as many groups as you can that share the same kind of training mentality as you or as your group. Um, because I mean, just say locally around here, there's a few FMA groups around here. Some of them kind of train the same way or similar way. Most others they don't, right? And for all I know, they could be Pekiti people or not, right? And that I think that's the important thing to do is try to find a group that has like-mindedness, right? So a lot of the groups are individuals that we like to spar with or bring to our open spars. They're not Pekiti people, they usually don't even belong to a specific system, right? But they follow similar kind of like methodologies. For me, it was funny when I first started getting into the sparring. It was a world apart from the way things are now. Before they gave me a fencing mask and the gloves, and they kind of pushed you into it, try to like, okay, go hit the other person. And like thinking of it now, but how I did it before, like that was very crazy or ludicrous to me, because when I first started, I didn't have sensitivity to how hard I'm trying to hit someone. Most of it was like, oh shit, like blah, blah, like just like trying to swat flies as hard as you can, right? And you think of it now, if we were to do that with current students or upcoming students, there's so much more risk for injury, which means those students won't be able to come back to train for a while, which makes your class smaller. Like all that stuff, like it throws out the window when you're doing it yourself, because you don't know any better, right? It's dumb. We would, and some places are still kind of like that now, where back then, you would be proud of the injuries that you get. Hey, look, I broke this, or I broke my rib that time, and it's like, I mean, what are you proud of? Like, that just shows that you got hit there. Like, I'd rather be proud of hitting someone else and saying I hit that guy or something, But no, I mean, that's how it was back then, I found. And over the course of the years, when we started running our own program and class, we had to start figuring out how to dial things back for the masses, right? How do we bring all these new people that we're getting into sparring, right? Gently, but not useless, right? And so far, it's been kind of like a roller coaster, but been going pretty well with the amount of people that are sparring like on a consistent basis from our group. But there's still people who prefer not to spar, and they might not exactly tell you why. They might internalize that saying. Maybe it's something they fear, something that they don't want to do at all for whatever reason. But yeah, no, it's
That makes sense. So Lamont, question for you. So you're a full dog brother, correct?
Correct.
Or okay, so often in FMA we use the dog brothers as like the ultimate litmus of this is the highest that we can achieve for sparring. With that in mind, what has been like the path leading up to that for you, and how's that really informed your sparring? Because there is the argument with when people coming into FMA, especially looking at sparring, is that it's just MMA with a stick, especially when they look at the Dog Brothers, or it's just they're swinging away at each other with a stick, but there is no real. They lack the literacy and lack the informational set to actually understand what they're looking at. So going back to it, what has been your path leading to Dog Brothers, and how does that look for a litmus test as to what FMA sparring can be?
I guess I'd put a little bit of issue with that it's this highest level. I don't necessarily think it is. Like, there are some really great fighters there. I'll be the first to say that. But more than anything else, it's a group of guys willing to play. And out of a big group of fighters, you're going to get some people who get better, and you're going to have a cream of the crop. And a lot of people are, again, you kind of get all levels within the tribe, and the people who are generally better will sort of ascend and become full Dog Brothers over time. But for the most part, what they've generated is, groups of people across the world who are willing to get together and test each other and push each other. And I mean, in some ways, like people want to make it this elite fighting organization, and there are elite fighters. There are awesome fighters in it. There's also guys that are just average, but they're willing to push it to your limits doing it, right? There's pain sponges out there that will beat your ass. And they're not the most technical fighters in the world, but you gotta learn how to deal with that. Like, that's okay. There's guys out there that'll do that. So, and again, like, so I kind of take that because I've run into plenty of good fighters outside of Dog Brother ranks. We had our Tipon-Tipon today, our kind of like mini Dog Brother gathering today, and I got my ass kicked by a LARPer. and like he's like fast, good, great entries. That dude spends most of his time LARPing. Like, and great. So this full Dog Brother got his ass kicked by a LARPer, and that's okay. Like, there's guys out there that train a lot in their particular segment, and it translates. So again, like, people want to make it out this really high level thing, and there are absolutely high level guys out there. But it's mostly an organization of guys who are willing to get into a fight, and it's an opportunity to learn from it. And you're going to learn what a real fight looks like, versus a lot of our sparring events like the Tipon-Tipon isn't designed to be that hard level. But those events give you the chance to see other people and what other people can do. And there's plenty of good fighters outside of Dog Brothers.
What's interesting is like the barrier to entry when people look at FMA sparring is they either see, and this is just the two polar extremes, they see the padded stick foam noodle tag, and then they see Dog Brothers on the very far end. And a lot of people just miss the stuff in between, because like you were talking about pain sponges. So coming from the combat sports world, especially with boxing, we got journeyman boxers. I can argue that I was pretty much a journeyman boxer. I was tough. I wasn't great. I was okay. But I was willing to sit there and bang, and I did for 20 years. But I wasn't going to be a world champion. So, and understanding like that middle ground and people being comfortable with that, that's like the thing that somebody actually has to figure out for themselves. But outward looking in on this kind of like this wide field of what sparring can be, I think it's up to the organizational lead, the group leader, to say, hey, this is what it can be. It's, you start here, but you could be here, but it's okay to stay in the middle. So have you guys ran into that in this situation when you're trying to bring in a new person and get them used to sparring? Because I know there's people who just don't spar, either because of age, injury, or they just don't like it. But getting somebody to get in, get hit, what has been your experience to get them past that line of which they don't want to do it?
Yep. Actually, we had just at our last spar event that we had a good example. We had one guy come in from an organization or a group in Toronto that they've only done kind of like point spar tournaments, right? Touch first, and then that's the round, which is fine. That's his thing, whatever. And he came to our event, which is already like, it's 100% like, hey, good job on you for actually showing up, right? Most people don't. And he showed up. He went on against one of my students, and after the first hit, he stopped, and then my student kept pushing forward and hitting him, and it was good on him that he kept going for more rounds, and he fully admitted, saying, I don't know what to do after the first hit. Right, like, so we didn't, our guys didn't like totally wail on him, but that's kind of like the diamond in the rough type thing where we would love it for all the other groups that don't do the stuff that we do to come down, to come like try it out. It would only make you better by doing a different format. But unfortunately, there's not that many that do, and especially when it comes to instructors or coaches themselves, it's even more rare, right? Like they're not going to step foot in the same city that you're in because of that. It's and on the other side, we constantly tell our guys to go to these tournaments or these different events and try them out. We had the one Dog Brother event that I went to was the first one in Canada because it was at our gym. So the event was fun. It was cool. Then after that, they moved it to Montreal. But we got a lot of people that are like interested in joining up and trying to test themselves in a different environment, which is perfect.
Nice. What about you, Lamont? Then we'll go to this question.
About just introducing people at different levels.
Yeah, and getting them into sparring. Yep.
So in terms of the home club, we kind of demystified it. We just don't make it this giant jump. Like, it's just a tool. Like, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I can't punch. It's like, so my old karate dojo way back when, we used point fighting to get people into it. Hey, look, there's someone's fist coming at a high rate of speed, and bonk, it taps you on the nose. So you get touched in the face by a glove, and then later, whatever, you're a purple belt or whatever, the contact goes up. And now you've seen a lot of kicks and punches coming at you, and for some people, they'll move into contact sooner than other people. If the first thing that happens, you walk in and someone blasts you in the face, guess what? That's going to be a giant turnoff for a lot of people. And I think it's no different in Filipino martial arts sparring. For us, we start with padded sticks. We start with hand hunting. You're not getting smacked in the face on their first round. It's like, oh, ow, my arm get hurt. And there's sticks flying around, and you're trying to hit the other person, and of course you're going against someone who's better than you, and you're getting whacked on the arm. And then, next round, okay, we're gonna, you got a mask on, people are gonna hit you in the head. We're not gonna blast you in the head. Think, hey, look, oh, that was kind of scary. Bunk, and again, and over time you desensitize people to it until whenever they're ready, they take the step to rattan. For us, do you want an arm guard? When you go to full rattan, do you, heavier gloves, shin guards? I don't care. Our club actually just bought, they're like this, it's called a sparring hoodie. It has, it's a hoodie. It has internal pockets for pads that go on shoulder and forearm and elbow. And
that's cool.
So it's a HEMA product. But it's, they're just soft padding. So guess what? Now you've got full coverage. You can take a shot to the shoulder. You got hit even with rattan, but you don't come home with a giant stick hickey, right? So that's a gradation of, oh, look, I can get hit with rattan. And then eventually some people are like, I don't need the jacket anymore. We're only doing rattan. I don't need the jacket. I'll put the jacket on when start playing with steel or polymer because I want that extra protection for my collarbone or it has a gorget for thrusting and what like that, But again, that's just this gradated entry into contact and about people making it more comfortable for them.
Yeah.
Is it that HEMA has all the best like
gear?
What the hell? Like the hoodie I never had. I've seen like some of those gloves where it's like a little bit padded more here, like and it's not fair.
I mean, when I
20 years ago, they were doing everything. They were lacrosse gloves and fencing masks, and like some kind of gambeson around it, and they were hitting each other with wooden swords. Now they're steel, and they've got these cool, awesome gauntlets, and 15 manufacturers of puncture-proof jackets. We're playing catch-up in Filipino martial arts. The good thing is we can grab everything that they made, and pull them across. We are just now getting to the point where there's like legitimate sparring. We tested them out, commercially available sparring steel swords. We literally just did 2 prototypes today for a Ganuting and a Dahong Palai at the Tipon-Tipon for a manufacturer out of LA. When we were there was another manufacturer who showed up with, it was basically a kukri. Castile Armory came out with a short, a sword this big, but it was super flexible. And how hard is it to get and thick, and it looks like a kukri. Well, guess what they're going to make next is Filipino martial arts swords. So we're just now getting to the point where we can start doing that, but we're riding on the coattails of the HEMA crew because they've got people willing to spend the money and the developmental gear for it. The nice thing is that it's now available to us. The problem is getting FMA people who are generally cheap bastards to invest in the gear to safely use steel for sparring. We're used to, oh, a $35 lacrosse glove and a $60 mask. That's like expensive. As soon as you start going to steel, it's like, oh, you got to buy a $200 jacket, get some shin guards on. Hey, did you know these gauntlets are $200? Like there's a gear shift that you have to be able to make if you're going to start swinging steel at each other. That might take us a while.
I was wondering, like that's actually a big reason why they came out with more advanced equipment. It's like the actual demographic of those who are actually training it. You know, I'm wondering if they just have more money than the people who are training Kali.
Dude,
and then the investments there.
A long sword costs you $500.
Yep.
And that thing, it won't last you 2 years.
Yep.
But a sparring long sword will cost you $500, and you expect it to break in 2 years. Like how many like rattan sticks is that?
I know we're using sticks. The lacrosse gloves and helmet that I'm using, they're used. And last years. So.
Well, let's go back to this question because it's actually in line with what we're talking here. So James was asking about outside padded sticks or weak half. What are your opinions on people who don't use more armor instead of more control? Boxers and Muay Thai, people use gear and less than 100% force, but doesn't seem to be a common thing in FMA.
Regarding padded sticks, and I think James knows what I'm talking about when I say this, is when it comes to padded sticks, I always find that's more dangerous than the rattan, like fully. Anytime, even with an advanced guy or a new person, whenever you get them sparring with a padded stick, including myself, we'll hit harder than we would with a rattan stick. It's like it's so stupid. It's like I think maybe because you feel it's padded, you think that you need to hit it harder in order for them to feel a little bit, but you fully feel, you could break a finger with a padded stick maybe. I always find, you would get more bruises with that. And on the other side, when you're using padded sticks, you could also disrespect the actual attack oncoming even more. Like when you see padded stick sparring, you'll see people like, pop, like hit, stand there, get hit, trade shot for shot rather than hit tactically, move around, hit tactic, that you would with rattan, right? So I mean, I try to avoid padded stick and just go have our guys use rattan just because I hate padded stick for that reason.
So I used to use 3 levels of. I had a light padded stick, which is like PVC and and pipe foam, like duct tape. My next level padded stick was 3/4 inch nylon rod and pipe foam. Nylon rod is like kind of the same density as Cocobolo, just about, like it's really close.
Mm-hmm.
And so that thing was 13 ounces. My dog brother stick is 11 ounces.
Yeah.
So that thing, like all the jabbing game went out the window. Like people were big swings, but they had the psychological permission because it's padded to just wait, exactly what you were saying, and just hit each other. And after a while, our guys, like, then eventually you go to live stick, rattan, like light rattan or whatever. And after a while, people are like, I don't want to do heavy padded. Like, let's just go to rattan. And so now, like, the class just abandoned my heavy padded stick, and because it hurt. Like you're like, wham, oh, okay.
Like it actually provide better protection, or was it just that it made the?
Oh, no, it was worse. Like it was heavier than my dog brother stick. Like we TKO'd people through a mask with a stupid heavy padded stick because it was padded and people were swinging for the fences. And then as soon as you go to rattan, they're like, oh, dink. Like, I don't want to hurt you because it's a 7-ounce rattan stick. It's they're careful about it all of a sudden. So exactly what you're saying is the rattan is safe enough, like safer as a tool that we can go to it almost immediately. And again, sort of to James's question about the padding, certainly we're implementing it. And to me, a lot of times it's a comfort level thing. where, you know, hey, you want forearm guards? Like, I just want you to go out and get used to being hit. And great. Where, you know, with our club, we have HEMA jackets as well. You know, good. That sucks up some of the pain for the people who don't want to get hit really hard and doesn't want to sting really hard. Great, fantastic. And I don't care, as long as you don't treat it like armor. Like, I don't want you out there blocking with your forearm because you have a forearm guard. I want, you know, it's still you know, you're supposed to be fighting like you weren't armored. We don't do armored sparring, you know, so, but just treat it like, you know, it's your skin. And as long as you do that, I don't care.
You ever, I always wonder those guys who do recap, you know, where they wear that full dress there, how that compares to the HEMA equipment, and as well as that hoodie equipment that you just mentioned earlier. Like, what are the density differences between them? Are they heavier, less? You know?
I've never worn the, you know, whatever the body armor that the WECAP guys have. So if I had to guess though, some of the, what they call, and in HEMA now that there's like different levels, like the hoodie is the lightest, right? It's designed for maybe single stick, which is like thin rattan. It might be for like sort of small sword stuff where it's designed to stop penetration. Like if you ever see like Olympic level fencers, you see their jackets. It's kind of like one of those, except it has some padding on appropriate spots. So it's safety in case you get penetration or a broken weapon. So it's not a lot of protection physically, you know, like especially against thrusting. There's nothing against thrusting except for the throat, which has protection on. So that would be the lowest level. You have medium jackets, which are like kind of in between, and then you have like long sword jackets, which are high. There's someone swinging a 3-pound bar of metal at you with 2 hands, even if they're supposed to be using control. Yeah, you're gonna want, you know, decent protection from when they hit you, right? So, and then on that highest level of protection on the HEMA end, you'll see plates start showing up on externals, like to protect the cap of the shoulder, to protect here, to protect the elbow, and everybody is using like hard forearms and elbows, right? So you'll see different levels on there, especially for this kind of the bony area. Yeah, those thick jackets. There's a lot of protection on there for the long sword, because you need it. Someone swinging two hands at you with a 3-pound sword, you know, with a striking edge that's 3 millimeters wide. So
I ask because when it comes to WECAF, you know, I mean, I've never done WECAF, but what I admire about the WECAF kind of like organization, or what they do, is their reach, right? I mean, some people travel across the world to participate in these tournaments, right? You know, I just wonder if there's any. I wonder if they've reached their evolution peak of where they are gonna be, or if there's any chance of them somehow, you know, implementing these, you know, lighter equipment and eventually less equipment to know, like, you know, like I wonder if there's any chance for WECAF itself to evolve where it could be something where, you know, it's a little more admirable for other people to jump in, because again, the reach that they have. These guys have tournaments all around the world, and it seems to be unified in the sense of what rules they have, even though it's probably impossible for them to count how many hits they get. But still, you know, like I would love to see a future where like a lot of my guys would travel to go participate in these tournaments and train for tournaments, you know, just not the way that they are now. But that would be awesome. That's why I'm, you know, something to.
So within some of those organizations, I don't know about WECAF in particular, GSB, Global Stick Blade Alliance, something like that.
Yeah.
They have a point fighting division, which is first to, you know, it's kind of like fencing, right? I'm going to hit you first. So it's the race to hit you first, you know, but I think that's padded with light armor, right? So within the same organization, they have guys, heavy kit, kind of that exchange, which I don't appreciate. But they have the point fighters, which are doing essentially what's exactly the same, you know, not exactly the same rule set. We'll talk about rule sets later, but you know, think Olympic fencing with a stick, where it's a race to hit you first, right? And I think they use it padded, so the gear is there, the people are there, like maybe the rule set needs some more tweaking to make it different than it is right now, but they're already doing it.
Uh-huh. Are they on the same global scale as like WCAF?
I've not being involved. My understanding is the GSBA split off, when it was, martial arts schisms about something, and I don't know who's got what rule set. But again, and maybe they're trying to offer, it to a bigger audience. Not everybody is training for, they want to do the Michelin Man exchange, but this thing over here looks cool. Great. Now you can appeal to a totally different audience. Maybe I'm not willing to bang with that dude in full rattan, but I'll do the padded stick exchange. Great. So I'm fantastic. Just like, I think we're happy with padded sticks up to a point. Great. If this is what takes you to get in the door, awesome. So
yeah, I think that's the most important, right? Like, if they're going to try to market, bring more people in, they're going to have to think of different ways, different doors for them to come in, I guess.
So here's a question that was brought up on the Instagram feed, particular actually to our whole subject here, is what would be an ideal competition rule set that you guys would like to see? Which I'm going to preface that because we've been talking about the different levels of sparring, like padded sparring, armored sparring. So we would have to be a little more specific as to what type of sparring. So I'm going to say for this question, stick sparring. What would be an ideal rule set for stick sparring for you guys?
Go ahead.
So stick as stick, right? So like this is kind of a Dog Brothers thing, right? So in Dog Brothers, we generally don't play stick as blade, right? If you're carrying a stick, you're treating it like a stick. So I might move in, take a shot to give a shot. Most of my training is blade based, so I don't ideally like to do that, but I can double stick. I can break down your initial shot, and you're swinging at number one. I will come in and I'll crash and I'll catch, like, sort of fist to forearm or the base of your stick. I'll crash that to get inside, right? I can do that in a stick exchange. Now, as a rule set, in Dog Brothers, it doesn't matter. Like, you're fighting, right? If you take a hit that you don't, that you can't handle, then you're done. But so there doesn't have to be a point system in Dog Brothers. If you can get a clean shot out of that, right? If that's stick and stick, and you drop a shot on his collarbone, and that counts as a torso hit. How do you differentiate? Oh, he hit me with the base of his stick on my forearm, which is a terrible hit. I crashed that, and I got a good shot in exchange, right? And that's really hard to judge. So for stick fighting, it's hard to do. I think it's hard to do stick fighting as a point fighting system. I've seen rule sets that would be, I get in 2 shots and get out unscathed, right? So if I can get in, go bang, bang, and get out, that's how you score. So I've seen a rule set like that, which I actually super like. Like, the whole point is hit and not get hit, right? It is less clean to be like, I got a better hit than you, right? I only got broken ribs and I hit you in the head, like I win. So that's like or like whack me in the knee, but I still took out your head. That's, that you can do that with stick. For a lot of my training, I like blade-based rules because it makes it more technical. You can't trade. It doesn't matter how, oh, you only hit me in the leg. Well, now you're crippled for life and you're dead. Great. Yeah, you won. Congratulations. But for stick, it's really hard to come out with a point-based rule set. If you're doing Dog Brothers, if you lost or not. Like, you know what happened. But for a point-based rule set, I haven't come out with a rule set that I really like. I'd much rather just force you to do a blade-based thought process. Like, I want you to hit, and we're going to win by doing this, no exchanges. Make this clean.
What do you think there, Justin?
Yeah, like when it comes to there's 2 ways you could look at it. Like, when it comes to point, well, if it's competition, it should be point-based, right? Otherwise, how will you know who actually wins the competition, right? But what I'm thinking is, the people, the pros with doing point sparring or point competition is, it's easier to kind of like to after you get the clean hit or after they get the counter, like whatever, after the exchange, they stop the match, you reset whatever, that the good thing about that is just for the clarity of the judges being able to be like, okay, that person scored, that person, like you're able to stop it, right? The bad thing about that is because, you stop the momentum, you stop the match, right? And that sucks for everyone. On the other hand, you can have like a collective point based type thing, similar to just say like MMA, where the match goes on until you're either TKO'd, submitted, or at the end of the round, then they tally up the points. But when it comes to Kali or stick fighting, like that's almost impossible to do because there'll be a clash where you could hear the stick maybe like 500 times, but maybe only one hit something and you won't see it unless you pull up our instant replay. Like that's why it's like I don't like the point spar where you stop after every exchange, but I don't see any other way around that if you want to make it an official competition, right? I'm not a fan of the first hit, then it stops. I would prefer if there was a way where, when the exchange happens, when you hit something, but if they hit you back, maybe that becomes null and void, so that way it puts more onus on the person who's initiating to like really try hard to hit cleanly and not get hit, and then vice versa on the person who's being attacked to actually, retaliate as fast as possible, without the idea of like, okay, hit me, let's take a break, start again, and start that. I'm not, that I think that's one of the flaws when it comes to that kind of like point system. But again, like if we're talking about how to unify rules in order to make a competition based tournament type thing, I can't see any other way except for judging on each exchange.
So point sparring, there was a couple comments coming through like I don't like point sparring, and kind of kind of what you just said, Justin. If I hit you and then in the same moment, bang, you hit me in the head, clearly I didn't win, right? I don't, it's not lightsabers. I don't chop off your arm, especially if it's a stick. Then you don't lose. Again, in HEMA tournaments, credit to Morgan Garrett, who put on the Short Blade Symposium, where I had the opportunity to compete under essentially HEMA rule sets. And the one that they chose, and this is pretty common, is that they take what they call afterblow into account. So I hit you, and then within a beat, right? If I get hit in return, there's some sort of afterblow ruling happening. So I hit you in the arm, but bang, I get hit in the head. Depending on the rule set you use, It can nullify your shot completely. And we also put on a point fighting, blade-based tournament. We use an afterblow rule. And if I hit you and you hit me a beat later, you both lose. Like you both lose a point on that one because you both got hit. Hit and don't get hit. It doesn't matter that I was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, you mean a beat after like the initial hit lands and then like one step, two, and then another hit.
Like, yeah, and it's sort of faster than that. It's like bop bop, like kind of like we're trading. Like I can hit, you can go bang bang, like and you that's an exchange. You didn't cut me in half with your sword, and my arm was still moving. I still get this hit. And some of that stuff can be gamed. You'll see people. There are some rule sets that are like the first hit, and depending on your HEMA rule set, maybe the head is worth 3 points and the arm is worth 1, right? Something like that. I want to increase the value of going to deep targets because it makes the fight interesting versus us just sending it Largo trying to hit each other's hand the entire match, right? You want to incentivize people closing to that closer distance. So you can game some of this depending on the HEMA rule set of, he swings at my head, I'm going to block with my arm, I'm going to hit him in the head back. Well, that's bullshit too, right? That's not cool. Like you don't sacrifice your arm to, that's gamemanship in terms of the rule set. But that's why people screw with rule sets. But essentially, they take away the afterblow or the nullification where it's like we trade, bang bang. Okay, you're both dead. Like, so you both lose, or nobody gets points out of it. However that works. The other one would be you hit me in the leg and I hit you in the head. You get a point for the leg and I get points for the head. Now I'm up, because I'm positive too. And as long as I'm not sacrificing, like I'm not sticking my leg out as a bait and I'm letting you hit me to trade because I moved your weapon out of the way, right? Then it makes sense. So there's various rules that start taking that into account. There are other rules that the rule set that Morgan Garrett used was, if I trap your arm, so if I hit you in the head, it's worth 3 points. If I trap your weapon arm and I stab you, that's like worth 4 or 5, because now you can't hit me, right? I want to incentivize all this trapping business that we're supposed to be doing in Filipino martial arts. Like I roof crash, I wrap up your arm, I stab you, I get 5 points. Hitting me in the head is worth 3, right? Because now you can't trade with me. I've wrapped up your arm, I've secured the counter blow, and that gets me. So you want to incentivize people versus just staying in Largo.
So this sounds like the rule set that I often would employ with my guys, because I have a lot of wrestlers and I had a lot of jiu-jitsu guys because we're an MMA gym, is that you have to bridge with the stick, but you have to use the stick. And the stick is a stick. So you have to exchange with the stick. You have to bridge, but the round was scored at the takedown. So we could fight in the clinch, but it was scored when you're on the ground. There's a full point to take you to the ground, but it's a full win if you get the submission, because the emphasis was to close the gap and bridge. Because the issue that I was running with a lot of these guys, especially when I was doing with law enforcement, is this: you got to close the gap to tie them up and take care of them, because we weren't focusing on the blade aspect, but they were still dealing with the range and timing of a stick doing what a stick does. So, I mean, that might be something to play with.
Yeah, for me as a shorter fighter, I lived off closing. I was never going to win at Largo. Like, there's dudes out there like 6'5", and it's like, okay, like I'm never reaching your head. So my whole game was crashing. Like, it had to be. Like, I'd hit you in the hand, make you worry about, pull back that hand to a chamber, and then I can crash your chambered hand. Like, so that's using a point system. But that's how I had to win. I was so much shorter than everybody else. So
the point system you were just talking about earlier, Lamont, is that what you guys use at the Short Blade Symposium?
Yeah, so that's the rule set that he used. Yeah, so it was, and it changed a couple times over, but not a lot. But again, it kept that same idea of encouragement, of that high skill level. Can I close, control your weapon, and kill you? Like that's harder to do than standing out at Largo and just trying to hit you in the hand. So I want
how many judges, or how many people are judging or refereeing like each match? Like, how does that work with that?
So it will depend on the match. At Short Blade Symposium, it was usually 3. So you had a center and two sides, basically. And I think at some HEMA tournaments, for like especially the finals, they'll have as many as 5. 1 center and then all these corners, and then it's a majority decision about what you scored with, right, or who scored, and who saw what.
I like that. Yeah. And again, it seems like the HEMA people or the HEMA organizations are ahead of us in counting as well. What the hell?
So the cool thing is they're starting to come out with continuous rule sets where instead of stop, like I hit, we have to talk about it. Essentially, the fighters, like, we have an exchange and then we'll break. So it isn't just like we exchange and bang, 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 we spend the rest of the round like at medio hitting each other. You'll see exchanges and then they'll break. They'll self break off, and then they close again. And then the corners are somehow, and I've never competed under that rule set. They're tracking, like, okay, blue got points over here, red got points in the, and I don't, having not competed under, but those are starting to come out into play. So that there's, it's continuous activity, and it's a lot more of a cardio thing because you don't hit once and then the judges are talking for 30 seconds, and then we go again, kind of thing. It's you're just going, and it makes it more like a sort of kickboxing round, where tie up a bang. Okay, we're gonna get this and bang. Okay, close again. We're not just gonna sit there and at the entire round hugging and hitting each other. We're gonna break it out and come back. They just self do it. So.
Speaking of equipment and technology, there's this one post someone sent me a while back. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was kind of like, it looked like motorcycle kind of jacket type, like it's like gear that's aligned with your body, but it registers where you get hit, and how many times. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but that might be, that could be the future. Who knows?
That was an Australian group. They actually put out a couple fights on those, and unfortunately, it came out terrible because you would register a leg kick. Like, I kick you with a Muay Thai roundhouse, and it's going to register more than me hitting you with my machete, right? Like,
it wasn't.
So unfortunately,
it wasn't.
Theoretically, it was supposed to get to oh, that's a kill shot, and they actually have these registers, like you hit them in the temple, but also it was super complicated, complex, like for sure, super expensive, and unfortunately, the kick is obviously hitting 4 times as hard as me hitting you with a machete, right? So you get weird registers like this where it didn't make a lot of sense, like coming from a weapon fighting perspective. But stuff like that, you'd think. I saw something recently. I want to say it was out of China. They're wearing kind of like Chinese kind of old scale armor, but they've got these like plates on them. They score them by breaking the plates, where it's or they break or they ding the plate so that you're like, okay, got that one, ding. And I don't know how they scored it. Because they had some around there, like on the kidney, and it's like, is it a race to hit all of them? Because if I've lost all my front ones and I've got one left kidney back, I'm gonna fight you like this. How do you get around and hit my left kidney if you still have frontal plates, because you're better than me and I haven't been hit yet. So I don't know how that game is played, but I've seen a couple. There was one group that had like these glass things, like shoulder on arms, and it was a competition to break all the other guys' sensitive targets before he could break yours. And there's total gamemanship then, right? Because if I've got the side here, of course I'm protecting this thing, or whatever, and trying to, not. So there's all these, again, for weird competition things, everybody's going to game their rules, but who cares? None of us is sword fighting for real, so that doesn't matter. This is just what game we choose to play.
That's not a bad idea, but I mean, forget the the examples where you had like specific targets, whoever hits them. Forget the ones like in the weird places, but just say like that idea of gamifying a match, like that could be used on so many levels. I mean, on the competition side, that it could be kind of like maybe a special game type thing, bonus match or something like that. But that's not a bad idea. I don't know why I never heard of that or thought of that. It's kind of like hockey where they'll have like crossbar in the posts and right, like that's
So I think, having an overarching organization like WCAF would actually help. Having something for martial artists, Filipino martial arts, to work toward would also help. To help unify a sparring rule set, competition in general, so it gives somebody to look forward to. Because we have these little groups like Beat the Crap Out of Cancer, you got Tipon-Tipon, you got Dog Brothers gatherings. If we had, and of course WCAF and PCAF, but we had like a unified like Filipino martial arts tournaments that you have these different rule sets that was matched nationally. That would actually help a lot because there's a lot that FMA, like we've been saying, can learn from HEMA, and also FMA could definitely learn from combat sports, because ultimately the end all goal for combat sports is either you're going to the Olympics or you're going pro. and there is organizations and facilities to allow for that progression. And for FMA, the real question is, like, what are you going to get out of all this training? Either self-edification, culture, self-defense, or without a competitive outlet, it's really hard to like keep somebody consistently training the fighting aspect unless they have those other desires. So, and I just wonder for in the long run how that could occur for FMA, because for kids, for example, just like any martial arts thing, kids are the lifeline to feed into the program. So you have to make it approachable for kids. More importantly, you have to make it approachable for their parents to get them involved in this weapons-based sparring activity. Because with like jiu-jitsu, it's really not that hard for parents to go in and say, oh yeah, we're going to go jiu-jitsu. Yeah, you're going to roll around, you're going to submit, and it's not as risky and dangerous as say like Muay Thai. So, and with FMA, you're dealing with sticks, and people see either the two extremes of LARP or Dog Brothers. Is just trying to find the middle ground is really the goal here. And I think that can be accomplished through a unified game, a unified sparring organization. It's just I would like to see some group put forward this effort, because I mean Dog Brothers already does it, but 10-year-old Johnny is not going to go do Dog Brothers.
So other groups do. For a long time, they had sport. They call it like sport chambara, right? It's padded. They had padded spears, padded two-handed swords, padded short weapons, and you gotta like they were showing up at point karate tournaments because it's point karate. It's point, right? It's padded weapons. You've got a grill on your mask instead of the regular karate, latex dip foam, and then you could go to town, and it was point fighting. It did everything that you're talking about, aimed at 10-year-olds, aimed at 8-year-olds to go out there. And then at the end of it, they would have, you could go pole arm versus two-handed sword. Like that was a thing. And, there was, at the time, there was no rankings for it. You just entered it, and who cares? Is this fun? Good. Like, and the promoter only wanted, like, it's one more event. I get to charge you $15 to enter. They get money in their pocket, but as a entry, it's like, and for if you're own a karate school, oh hey, it's one more class I get to offer. Hey, the sport chambara thing over here, you get to pay an extra $20 a month to go take this class or whatever, for my weapons curriculum instead of doing weapon kata. So the incentive is there. Out there, and people have tried to do it, and I think people have done it. Filipino martial arts hasn't done it because we don't have commercial schools for the most part. There are some people who are absolutely doing that. I want to say Tijuana Polo has something like this going right now, in terms of padded weapons, the whole thing. And it's been a little while since I've seen it, and I don't know what level it is, but I'm pretty certain he had this whole system built up for an internal sparring group aimed at kids. And I might be wrong about, but I'm pretty certain I saw that a while ago. I haven't seen anything recently on it, but he's doing it. Doesn't mean the rest of us can't. And really, that's a gear. Padded sticks are easy. There's tons of padded sticks out there. The headgear, if you're doing padded sticks, is easy, and it's just a matter of gloves. Rule set wise, it's whatever rule set you want to come up with. The simplest is and the easiest to judge is first hit, right? That's just, there's a reason why people make that. It's a simple decision. Who saw what hit first? As soon as you get more complex than that, then you requires either better judges or judges who have seen it before and who can judge it appropriately. I'll do a little plug is that the PTTA is coming out with a sport rule set that could perfectly be used for that. And I'll be the first to say that since I'm one of the main people developing it, it's going to look like a lot of these HEMA rule sets that I've been competing under, because I think they've done a good job about dealing with like blade centric approaches to weapons. And, it's not a complete, just copy and paste, but it's pretty close. Because I think they've done a good job with those rule sets. So, but that's one thing just to give people, like, if you haven't sparred before, here's a rule set, take this home if you're a new club. and this is what we're going to try to do. Or, you know, if you come in, that you get used to this kind of point fighting rule set. And then after that, it's just like, you know, you get used to that. Okay, comfortable with that. Good. Now just go free spar, but still keep this mentality in mind that, you know, well, we don't want to trade. We, you know, here's where you close, all of the stuff, you know, and then that just becomes your regular background sparring. But it becomes both a competition vehicle and a way to introduce people to sparring in a comfortable manner, because there's rules around it, and, you know, it's not, you're not just getting thrown in for the, you know, just for the heck of it.
Sounds like that we need a large enough FMA organization to spearhead it. And it sounds like PTTA is one of those organizations that's large enough to spearhead it. Just like all the other things in FMA, it would be nice to see it is the issue within FMA, as we all know, that FMA doesn't get along. So trying to get enough organizations to play well with each other to say, hey, this is what we're doing. It's not a matter of kowtowing to either, but this is just what we're doing. Come support it. That would do wonders for developing a cohesive FMA-centric sparring curriculum for both youth and adult and just competition in general. So once we get over that little hurdle, we should be fine, right?
Right. Yeah, that will be the tough part. Like, people, I mean, we know how political anything gets. HEMA has an advantage on us in that it isn't super political, because there's no living lineage. Like, there really isn't any living lineages. So nobody has like, I am Pekiti, you know, like, you know, this is the way we do it, and it's the best way. That doesn't exist in HEMA, because everybody has recreated it in the last 25 years. You're starting to see, you know, senior instructors who have been teaching the same thing, but this ingrained competition mindset is out there. I'll also say that HEMA has done quite well with no fixed rule set. This tournament over here does this way, and this tournament over here does it a little bit different, and this tournament over here does this, and they allow takedowns over there. You know, so and they use it almost as a feature, not a bug, because it forces you to play a different game. Okay, you know, you know, coming from not a HEMA guy, is like, I should be able to show up and play any game. Just tell me what the game is. Like, what's the rule set? Oh, let me try to work this rule set. You know, and take it as a challenge, rather than like, oh, I don't play that one. You know, is it first to point? Fine. Well, I'll play the first to point game. You know, for me, it's almost that challenge. I can do that. You know, or, you know, and, you know, a lot of times I'll get my butt kicked doing that because it's not my game. But I can learn from it.
So what about you, Justin? With these different rule sets and trying to get an organization to spearhead it, since you're both are part of the same organization overall, PTK. I don't know if you're both PTTA or PTTI. Okay.
I don't know. It's I think when you mentioned having a specific rule set to help, first off, to help bring people into FMA itself, to like help encourage them in there. I think that's definitely true. I must say, like, with our specific group, we grew so much when we started implementing sparring as a regular kind of like topic, right? People start to like that. Kids is another thing, though, right? I mean, I don't think we've ever really tried to target to bring in kids or a kids class, but I think that's why, like you said, it's important to have a specific rule set to bring in kids into FMA. Yeah, I mean, the only problem I could see with doing that would just be like, you know, maybe it might be too early in terms of, you know, the kids come into this FMA program because they like seeing the sparring and it was fun, it was gamified. But what if they're training for the actual tournaments and not learning the art itself, right? Because there could be two quite different paths, right? I mean, one, you could be learning curriculum, terms, movements, time, like history of specific drills, like et cetera, weapons, but then that person might never ever want to go into actual competition. And then you got this person who's built for competition. You know, maybe they're athletic, maybe they're tall or lanky, or maybe they're, you know, like maybe they don't want to learn the art. And sometimes I fear like bringing sparring into kids or adults when it's a little too early. They might not like want to deep dive into what you're trying to teach them as well, right? When it comes to the different organizations and unifying, or not unifying, but different organizations spearheading a type of rule set, I think that's the only way to do it. But we're Filipino martial artists. It's like we're the worst out of the worst. I mean, there's a reason why this has not been done in how many years, right? You'll have one saying we want to do it this way, and I think that's really the sad thing. When you mention HEMA's doing a better job at it, again, I think maybe it's demographic. Like maybe they're just more, they're a lot easier going people, maybe, or something. Maybe they're not all hopped up on lechon and tandoy. Yeah, hunting and all that stuff. Like maybe that might be one of the reasons. But I think the more we have discussions like this, right? PTTA is a great group to spearhead this kind of idea, right? Why? Because they have such a large reach around the world, right? That might be the way to do it. And honestly, I think the best way to continue it is just to put yourself out there and to kind of like meet other people, meet other groups, like open train with other groups as much as you can, right? Play the politician type thing, instead of playing just political game, play the politician, like meet with people, save face with different groups, build bridges with the others, because I mean, no one's doing it, or not enough people are doing it.
Yeah. So the thing that I remember NASCA back in the 2000s because I was competing in it. It's the North American Sport Karate Association. It's the people you saw on ESPN. This was a national and international open karate tournament with sparring, forums, all these things. What I could see back then is because it's still going, what we could do is have some ambassadors from FMA show up and say, hey, let's add this as another category into NASCA because it has that international reach. It has already that. I mean, NASCA is already a big promotion as it is anyways. Adding a new category would be phenomenal. Because the thing that I found with having fight promotions up here in Alaska is we got to add whatever we wanted because it was our fight promotion. I was trying to get FMA point sparring or just stick sparring in there. It's just I didn't have any athletes from other gyms to do that. So it just never happened. But if we could get a bridge to, say, NASCA or ISKF, that would be a great way to bring a unified rule set to a global scale. And I think for PTTA, because we have PTTA people on here and listening, this would actually be a great idea to help bridge FMA as a sparring apparatus in a larger global sense. So that's my 2 cents.
I was actually approached by certainly not NASCA, but like a local. They're called. There's a local league, kind of like 7 karate tournaments in our area that go. And I was approached by one of the promoters, like, what do you think about putting on a weapon sparring division? And it was like interesting, for me, like, I don't want to go out and promote at 5 different or 7 different, tournaments because it would be my baby, okay, that's 7 more weekends that I'm driving around the Pacific Northwest on, and I don't really have the time for that right now. But it's like, as an interesting thing, it's out there. Like, again, just like that sport chambara that I mentioned, you can absolutely do it. The demand is out there, whether or not, and you just have to get other clubs that are like, oh, okay, we're doing this. The freaking ATA, the American Taekwondo Association, which is one of the biggest McDojo chains you've ever seen in your life, they've got stick fighting programs. It's like internally, and I don't. It's been a while since I've seen it, but padded sticks again. It's just one more class that I can charge your mom $20 for my kid to come in and do it. As a promoter of it, I don't care. I want you out moving, and hitting and not getting hit back. Like that's all we care about. So if you can tie into some of these organizations that way, like ATA adopted Krav Maga as their self-defense curriculum way back when, right? I'm pretty certain they adopted somebody's Filipino martial arts program for their stick fighting program or whatever, or their weapon fighting program, whatever. Those things are out there about people adopting and taking. So it's out there if someone's got the time and the willingness to do it. And like I said, I think Tuan Apollo's already marching right down that road and doing that. I'd love to see some of his like how that shows up in tournaments. We had a tournament in the Pacific Northwest in Portland 5 years ago that was put on by Grandmaster Merlino Hufana out of Bellevue, and it was FMA point sparring, like at a karate tournament, and it was like I didn't make it to that one, but it was like awesome. Unfortunately it lasted that one tournament. I never saw it again, but like there's that interest out there that hopefully we can put on this display and keep doing it. Actually, 25 years ago, I went to a tournament in Moses Lake up here in Washington, and I remember as a karate guy, and I went out competing karate, and I was watching these stick fighters, like 35 people in a stick fighting division, because that was the home base of a local stick fighting school, doing their thing, and it was awesome. So the interest is out there. Whether or not you can get it adopted on a broader scale would be, I think the interest is there. It's probably just some unification about a rule set, and just, because the promoters want more money. It's just another division. Hey, here's $15 for another division. You've got 2 kata divisions and 2 sparring divisions, and here's what else are you doing today? You're already at the tournament. So I think the interest is here.
I think an ambassador or several ambassadors is something that's important, but that's a full-time job. It would have to be. I mean, you're traveling to different organizations trying to spread the word. I don't know if anyone's actually doing that kind of role.
I mean, we have some great ambassadors within our community that could definitely do that. I mean, Paulo is in here somewhere. I mean, he's already got enough plates that he's juggling. Also, Tuhan Jared Wahangi, he's all over the place, and he was at your place. So that might be if that's within his wheelhouse and scope of what he wants to do. So, we have some pull in our community. It's just a matter of time and priority. So I don't know. These are great ideas, but it's a matter of like say versus do, and there's got to be that one special person to do, and hopefully this podcast will help inspire that one person if they hear about it, obviously, to actually go bridge that gap.
You're seeing FMA starting to go into different directions, which is beautiful, right? Like you're seeing it in stunt work, in movies, and then on the other side you're seeing more and more self-defense related seminars being sent out that are heavily based on Filipino martial art principles, right? We're growing in different directions. As long as you're growing, right? But on the competition side, that's just something where it hasn't grown as fast as the other sectors.
I think part of that is, aside from, actually, it is culture, because this whole idea of the backyard, hidden away, the guerrilla fighter, that culture that is inherently Filipino and then is translated here in the US. But the other issue of the culture of FMA often tends to stay within the realm of warfare, personal protection, and competition as an afterthought, when the fact is, historically, competitions were utilized for peacetime to keep the warriors in shape and prepared for the next cycle of war. So that's something that FMA in general could adopt. I don't know why we don't. I have some ideas, but the fact is, I think there should be a cultural shift, as there is right now, and we are in a beautiful time that can occur, because FMA is being fought out on the internet right now in general. And so we can actually talk and actually create an opportunity for that to shift. So, one of those things is having dedicated schools, because there's only a few dedicated schools. Of course, Dr. Tim Hartman is one of those great leaders to show that there's a dedicated school centered to FMA. So once we get over that little hurdle of having more of those, that we might be able to change the culture as well. So,
I think.
No, I was just to say it's funny you mentioned historically these warriors would compete against each other just to stay fit and keep in shape in between wartime. We're Filipino martial artists. There's no such thing as a fit Filipino martial artist. Okay, go ahead. I'm just stupid.
So actually, like the Olympics, right, for Greece, that's exactly what it was. It was like, if we're not engaged in actively killing each other, like, let's get our athletes together and do these war game related things. Like that's wrestling, running, all the discus, javelin. That's what the original Olympics were. It's an opportunity for those warriors to compete and in times that they're not killing each other, show off. So that's very much what that was. And now I think most Filipino martial artists are probably civilians and not using it actively in warfare ever. So that it makes sense to have an outlet that if we choose to, that we can use it that way. I had a brief period of time, like 2 years, I had a youth program. I called it Filipino swordsmanship because I can teach a kid sword and parents don't freak out about it like it's fencing, and kids, we show kids fencing all the time. It's an Olympic sport. So it's perfectly natural for kids to swing swords at each other. That's like this is why I do Filipino martial arts, because I was like most kids running around with a stick in my hand from my earliest pictures. Like that's what we want to do, and so I think there's interest in those kids' programs about learning how to fight with a sword. And so when I had that program, it's like, I'm not teaching a kid how to do knife. Like, not that I told their parents that. We'll ignore that when they turned 16 and went in the adult class. I was like, okay, the drill we did over here, here's a knife. Now this is how you can use it. But and for the most part, it was the swords. And I could teach 75% of my program with a sword in your hand. And that's perfectly okay. It's not even weird because nobody's going to be running around with a sword. I'm not teaching you to kill someone with a club. Like, it's a sword. It's safe for some reason. So I think the demand is there. I think the interest would be there. I think a lot of schools with the right audience, they'd be all over it.
Totally agree. I think also, like, we have two regions in, I'm going to say continental US that actually could do this. Actually, three. I want to say the West Coast, pack Northwest Coast, because you got California and that whole, and Washington, Oregon, because there's a lot of FMA there in general. Then Canada, where you're at, Justin, there's a lot of FMA there. And the third option actually is Florida, because that's mini Manila there in general. So with those three regions, we could do something. It could happen.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I'm looking in the comments here. I think Chris Chewy's here, right?
Chris Chew, yeah, he was in here.
Yeah, there you go. There's our Florida representative right there.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's right though. We when we deal with, like, find groups that are similar to what we're already doing, with the same goal mindset, we could do really anything.
Agreed. And actually, this is where conversations. I talk about FMAs fighting it out on the internet. It's a little stab at it, but the fact is we have opportunities to talk about this because this FMA is taking its prominence because conversations like this, because the amount of media that's out there, and we have the infrastructure to support it, especially post-COVID, that we've created really good online infrastructure to have communication and networking. And now we're in the phase that we have to actually do something with that networking. Here's a question from James regarding ambassadors. He's saying, but instead of TKD schools and the like, how about HEMA groups or fencing groups? Seems like a natural fit with FMA.
So, yeah. So HEMA guys in general are total nerds about anything that do with swords. That's why they're involved in HEMA. And Ferd was teaching down at SoCal Sword, whatever. So there was a big event and tournament down in Los Angeles, and he was teaching Filipino martial arts down there as one of the seminar topics. And he's done that multiple years. You know, HEMA guys are, again, they're no different than most of us. They're sword nerds. And that's why they're doing what they do, and they're interested to see other swordy things. You know, the problem, for lack of a better word, is they already have an existing program. For them, it'd be Messer. Why should they come and learn Filipino martial arts? For, you know, Messer is literally knife, right? German for knife. And their Messers are 34 inches long. You know, for their fighting knife, it's a short sword or long sword. Actually, it's just the hilt construction is a sandwich instead of, you know, a tanged weapon. That's literally the difference in definitions. So they got their own curriculums, which is why you can have events like Short Blade, where it was a crossover, where we have a machete and a gunting or whatever, and they have a Messer. We just matched them up for length so that there wasn't a length disadvantage, you know, that way, and then you could fight under the same rule set. They have enough of an existing curriculum. Unsurprisingly, it looks a lot like what we do, except they have a better crossguard than we have with most of the Filipino swords, especially the older Filipino swords. And so there's a lot more guard play that they'll use with it, where they're catching like the opponent's weapon on their crossguard before entering, even though the weapon might be very similar in length. So you'll see different strategies that way with it. But there's techniques that I've lifted right out of Messer manuals and put right into my game. There are, I learned it from Eric Noss, roof crash, overhand wrap, and I stab you. Unsurprisingly, roof crash, overhand wrap, and I stab you is in a Messer manual because it's a really useful tactic. There's a number of, my arm is wrapped up by that guy overwrapping me. How do I get out of this? Well, PTI and Two on Bill has a whole progression of things that he shows out of that. And, you know, there's one additional one that I got that's out of the Messer manual about, instead of cranking here, I'm going to wrap my blade and put it against your neck. It's exactly what we study. It's, you know, and it's just one more technique. I'm sure some Filipino martial arts figured that one out too. But, you know, so the overlap is there. It's already there. They don't have to come to Filipino martial arts to get it if they're studying that part of their manual. If you're some rapier guy, you're doing this totally differently. So
the MS you're talking about, is that methodologies and training, is that similar to FMA where, like, you know, heavy on the footwork or even similar type footwork movements? No?
So that's a little bit hard to say. In general, you'll see, like when we see people play Filipino martial arts, because of this ingrained emphasis on movement, we tend to have better footwork. That doesn't mean it didn't exist, but that it hadn't made it into the current HEMA group. Maybe because of they had a background in modern, you know, sport fencing, so they tend to go really linear on each other. And it's not like we don't see Filipino martial arts who go linear on each other all the time. We certainly do, right?
Yeah.
Like that happens all the time. And in general, though, you'll see people in Filipino martial arts, I think, use their footwork better, just because that's, you know, if you've trained under stress, you kind of do what your training is. But the footwork in the manuals is there, whether or not it's been emphasized. Like you look at some of the Spanish manuals, you want to talk about an exhaustive description of footwork. That's like here's 1,000 different ways exactly how you're supposed to place your feet, and you can't find anything in a Filipino manual or a Filipino martial art that isn't in the Destreza footwork. You can't. It's people got 2 feet. Like someone figured out how to get out of the way. So,
that's one of the things that I got so confused about when talking about HEMA is that like for the most part, people learn from a manual or from historical papers or scripts, right? And here I am, like nowadays, like I can't learn anything online. I can't, like I need like in person, and like I don't know how HEMA got so big from manuals and scripts. Like, I mean, I don't understand how that worked because do that.
Part of it is a big cultural revolution because a big thing for European culture is there was such a disconnect from their martial tradition with the advent of the firearm and its introduction into widespread military usage in Europe. So with that disconnect, the martial traditions were lost in a lot of ways. And so after that fact, you see a lot of sword nerd historians want to go back and reclaim their history because they lost the living history because of firearms. With Asiatic and Southeast Asian martial arts, we have a living history that's unbroken per se. And so there isn't necessarily that need to reconnect our history. Obviously, if you're a Filipino coming into the Filipino martial arts later in life, trying to reconnect your roots. But the fact is, within the Asian traditions, I mean, it's been an unbroken lineage despite the advent of firearms, despite colonialization. There hasn't been that huge block of time where nobody was training martial arts. Europe, there's a good couple hundred years. And this is where people looking back on it, big historians, sword nerds, that's how they're reclaiming their history, reclaiming their heritage. So
interesting.
Oh yeah.
And and a lot of these people studied other martial arts, like coming into it. Like there's one of the common things out of German is like wrestling. Wrestling is in every fighting martial art in history. Grappling is a component, right? Well, guess what? If you have a good judo background, a lot of the stuff that's in the HEMA manuals in terms of throws and unbalancing and everything else, that's that, and that's that, and that's that. It's not, and you're of course limited by the artwork, and the artwork fortunately got better as you got toward the Renaissance. You look at some of the the manual from the 1200s, and you're like, what is going on here? And then you just had to have people fight stuff. Like, I think this is what, and there's still people who argue about that stuff. Like, what's in 133? I don't know. Like, there's people will still fight about what's in that manual. But you get a bunch of people who are like, I want to learn this, and I'm willing to fight it and see what works. And then until someone does better, that this is the answer that we have, and this is my justification. And then 5 years later, someone shows up and is like, well, we can do this, this, and this. And I think this is a better interpretation of that. And at some point, some people are just like, I'm just here to hit people with swords. And those guys, like, oh, wait, look at that. Look how that footwork's coming out, because he's actually putting in the time, like, to get that off angle and that blow in, to get that simultaneous, offense and defense. I'm going to pick up your sword blow and and hit you at the same time with a single stroke. Well, guess what? That showed up in Asian martial arts all the time. And that was an ideal, that I don't block and hit you back, right? Ideally, I can simultaneously beat you. And that shows up in every martial art. So.
And for me, I end up using HEMA as a primary platform to inform my FMA weapon work, especially when it comes to dealing with the bind up, because the cross guard on a Messer or a German longsword is so better developed, because FMA, I mean, we don't really have cross guards. I mean, they're kind of there, but they're not really anything of note. So I end up using those to understand like Largo range and bridging, as a primary platform, because one, the gear's already there, two, of the tools are already there, and there is that impetus of moving with the features of the tool versus with a stick. I mean, there's that natural inclination of cavemaning it, and there's that disregard for all the other stuff. Now, of course, it's a comment on training, but I find with using HEMA as the platform, I end up being more conscious to the blade as it's supposed to be used, because the risk factor is actually there. So I find that because of my HEMA, my FMA is a little better. So
break in, break out is way easier if you have a cross guard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So like if I'm crossing blades with you and I want to move you out, it's way easier if I have a cross guard, because I can jam that into the blade and then rake that puño across your face. It makes it far easier. Or if I'm going on this side, same thing, right? Pick up your blade on the cross guard and then engage over the side. Exactly the same drill, but way easier if you have a decent cross guard.
So FMA people should study HEMA.
I would say they should study they should take the methodology, because that's how HEMA got to the point where it is, where it's producing legit fighters in 20 years from nothing. Like where they are now compared to where they were as a worldwide movement, and bunch of disassociated people. This is not one organization. This is a bunch of people out there trying to figure it out, have done it. And if you can go from zero with no living lineage, and that's the no living lineage is kind of BS. Like even classical fencing, where we still have existing people from kind of pre-World War II era, which was legitimate sword fighting before it kind of became all modern Olympic fencing out of it. Like those are real skills, and there's chunks of like small sword that are like its equivalent. It absolutely works. So you're still informed back to the Victorian era about a lot of these principles, or previous, actually, all the Napoleonic era. That stuff that still works.
Do you find HEMA people tend to do you find HEMA people coming into FMA, or you find more FMA going into HEMA, like to cross train?
I think, well, my group, we did it because we wanted to fight with steel, and the HEMA guys had the gear to do it, and that at least that's for us. I'm not sure that we necessarily we went to broadsword, we didn't do long sword, but our main driver was, let's do something different. We're supposed to be sword fighters. Let's fight with swords. And so we got to the point where we got, the HEMA guys had steel swords we could play with, and it's getting to the point where, again, they're starting to develop Filipino martial arts swords. So it's going the direction we want it to go.
Yeah, the last spar event we had, or one of the spar events we had one guy, HEMA guy, drive up from New York to join, and that's about it. I mean, we have one African martial artist, historical martial artist, who's a regular with us, but not too much HEMA guys coming in. It was interesting to spar with a HEMA guy. He had kind of like, he looked like a road warrior, with the padding and stuff. But yeah, no, it was great, and the methodologies was of course quite different from the way we were doing things. He wasn't quite used, because I think the sword he was using was a little longer than what we would use with our sticks. So we were closing a lot of distance, and he would kind of get overwhelmed a little when we get closer and closer past his weapon. But that's about the only HEMA guy I think I could remember that came to join with us. I would like a lot more.
Our Tipon-Tipons for the last 5 years have probably been half HEMA guys, just of different groups. Honestly, it's hard to get Filipino martial arts who want to show up and spar. As sad as that is to say, it's true. And just about every HEMA club sparring is a regular tool. It's just how they do it, because again, the people who join want a sword fight, so they're joining a club where they're aiming at sword fighting. Why Filipino martial arts don't join a club because they want a sword fight, I don't know, because that doesn't make. That's why I joined Filipino martial arts. So, but every HEMA club you join because you wanted to be a sword nerd and you wanted to sword fight.
Damn it, Filipino martial artists! What the hell? What? It just doesn't make sense, right? But I think it just comes down to the instructor, right? Maybe the instructor is very ego heavy. They don't want to be seen getting beat up by another instructor and risk losing students or risk losing face, which, I mean, that's just dumb when you come to think of it, right? I mean, if you're not throwing yourself in there, then you don't know what's going on. But then, unfortunately, a lot of the students, follow that same mentality, right? They don't want to join this one because their instructors are saying, don't join this one, or it's ridiculous,
It
For
really
Tipon-Tipon.
I was just saying, more or less, it's the issue of, again, it's culture in the gym and also culture of the martial arts they themselves, because we were constantly dealing from a historical standpoint. Are we preserving the arts and therefore propagating the art as a snapshot in time, or are we living the art, which tends to be more innovative, not reinventing the new, but we're adapting and actually addressing where we came from, which is the historical standpoint, but we're putting in an application as to the current and now, and it becomes its own thing, and constantly evolves. The risk of preserving the art is the risk of stagnation. I constantly say this because I'm a big Dune nerd, but stagnation is death. And the fact is, when we get stuck and just living and preserving the art as it was a couple hundred years ago, or the secret mastery of whatever master in the jungle from that time, we put ourselves in a hole that we don't move forward and address to what's actually occurring. And it goes back to the bigger cultural issue for a lot of Filipinos coming into FMA, trying to reestablish and reconnect to their culture, and trying to find, like, we can't go back to our roots per se, but we can live within the scope of what we are, who we're trying to be, and become a new thing. So it requires us to actually go out there and bang and do the things. We're a living art, not a stuck in past.
Some people, they use that preservation. They use the word preservation of the art as a cop out. There's this one instructor I remember. I reached out. I used to reach out every year to, like, once a year. Like, it was almost like on my phone on a notification type thing. Reach out to this guy, see if we could get our guys to spar together, right? And what he told us was, he goes, "No, brother, we want to preserve the art. We don't allow any grappling or kicking or punching." And I'm like, you're telling me, like, historically, Filipino martial arts, they didn't punch, kick, or grapple at any point ever? Like, come on. I sometimes that ticks me off so much, because, again, you personally, you're not trying to go to stomp on or dojo bash anyone. You're trying to, like, grow everything around locally, but those are things that you run into.
So for Tipon-Tipon, I do a running, like, personal invite, and I've got a document that are like, okay, invite these 20 clubs. Hey, this is coming up. I also have a list of, I've contacted these guys 7 times every single year, and they've never replied. And unfortunately, the never replied list is longer than my invite list. Like, and eventually, the people migrate down as I find new schools. But there's just a lot of schools who don't like that. And I'll throw this out there right now. Like, for our area, in Asano Blend schools, like Kali schools, not producing fighters. Like, I've got 10 different schools on my list. 2 of them produce, like, one guy, he used to be an instructor, he had his own club, and year 1 with Tipon-Tipon, jumped in, was sparring, did the whole thing. Like, Bruce Lee, spar. That's the only one I had for a long time. And then 2 years ago, I had, a group join in. They joined in because one of their students was also a HEMA practitioner who had showed up at the Tipon-Tipon, said, "Hey, this is pretty cool." And the Jeet Kune Do instructors, like, had a student who's like, "I want to try this." That guy showed up, had never sparred before. Like, showed up with padded sticks. I'm like, "Hey, can we do this?" I was like, "Sure." "Here, do you have a mask? What kind of gloves do you have?" "Okay, good." Okay. And I went out and sparred with him. that dude went home with a giant smile on his face, and now his club is showing up regularly because he had the guts to show up and spar. Right. And he is like the only Inosanto Blend school in Washington, as far as I can tell, that's willing to show up at a Tipon-Tipon and spar. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, so these clubs are training like Muay Thai, combat submission wrestling, Kali, like, and so that should be a pretty well-rounded stick fighter right there, right? Like, and nothing. Like, it's like, I don't understand. Like,
it could be the ego thing, but then on the other side, it could be if he's never sparred before. You know, that's another big thing where people put this big stigma on sparring, where they think it's like something crazy brutal, right? And it's not necessarily that, right?
Yeah, I'm like really nice with my invitations. Like literally, I'm saying this is not Dog Brothers. Like, this is, we do all levels, padded stick. Like, I'm super nice about my intro, and a bunch of you guys just don't do it. And I do not understand. Like, it's and I don't think it's Dan Inosanto's fault, but like the number of stick fighters that he's producing, or down lineage, however the down lineage side is, at least in our area, isn't doing it. And I hate to say that, because like Dan Inosanto is one of my martial arts heroes, and unfortunately, like, our local schools just aren't. I mean, there's other styles too, but that one stands out given the Bruce Lee connection, right? Like fight your art, like, and figure out what the truth in fighting is, and it's like, show up and spar.
How many schools, how many groups are there in your area? It sounds like a lot. That's big there.
Well, I mean, like the schools who show up, I probably got 15, like, of different groups and again, because I also pull in from Hemo groups too. It's not just Filipino martial arts. But we actually get a fair amount. We've actually pulled guys down from Vancouver. So the Pekiti guys up there with Loki's guys, and some of those guys will come down. So, our groups, the big side is probably 35, I think, was our biggest gathering. Our small side was like 13. Today we held it over here in Kennewick on the east side of the state for the first time, and we got 25. We were fighting for 3 hours, and that's what we probably pulled more matches this year than we have ever, because we started at 12:30 and we stopped at 3:30, and it was constant, either 90-second or 2-minute rounds, one after another. So the people who show up are willing to do it, and so I couldn't be happier. And so I think, again, it's demystifying it. We throw all this stuff on the internet. Nobody's, Tipon-Tipon has its own YouTube channel with every playlist from every fight, and some levels are entry-level padded stick, and some of them look like a Dog Brothers match. It just depends on the guys and what they want to do that particular day. But we try to demystify it. Like, this is sparring. It's not magic. It's just getting out and playing.
Actually, yeah, Kurt, I think that's the first thing when we're talking about creating a unified rule set to go globally with all these organizations. I think that might be the first actual step, is to demystify any sparring at all. Show everyone that it's really not such a big deal, and
agreed.
People will be leaning towards that.
And that's the thing about, I keep coming back to it. FMA is fighting it out on the internet, because everybody else, they've had the lineages pre-internet. They've already established themselves pre-internet. I'm saying like classic Asian martial arts. But for the Filipinos, the internet is our time to shine. And more that we have these discussions, more and more that we have opportunities to showcase this stuff, the more that we have to, like, say, hey, this is actually what we do, and then we're talking about it, versus the whole cultural idea of FMAs in the backyard and it's super secret and somewhat criminal and insurgent like. It's just, again, demystifying it by showing it. I mean, how we quell ignorance and fear is actually learn some stuff and be educated about it. So this is where these kind of things are important, and I would like to see more FMA practitioners who fight actually put more stuff out there. And I know there's quite a few who do. I know both of you do. I know I have. And so there's a good core of people within our community who actually put data out there to prove that FMA isn't as scary as you think it can be. It's not always Dog Brothers, but it's not as always as silly as LARP. There's a spectrum, and we can prove that there is, and there's an upper mobility and a goal for that for people to achieve. So my challenge for the audience and anybody is put your content out there. Post your videos, post your fight videos, just advertise your stuff, because people are hungry for it. They want to see it. And this is how we build a bigger network. So, yeah, well, with all this, I mean, do we have any other things that we want to throw on the docket for today's sparring? I mean, we went over quite a few rules. We went over several things that we could see moving forward with it. I'm going to actually tie back to combat sports, because there's a lot of FMA practitioners that should fight, that do fight, but they fight in combat sports. I don't know why they don't make the transition over to stick sparring. And I think, again, it goes back to culture, preserving the sacred, secret art that is our heritage and lineage, and not actually applying it in a competitive standpoint. Because you also have the combative people who are doing the straight stabby kill prison stuff, which is all fighting warfare stuff. But you also got a pressure test, and way you pressure test of it is sparring, and you're still dealing with active resistance. So I think more Filipino practitioners just need to fight more, whether it's boxing, jiu-jitsu, but definitely with stick fighting.
So our Tipon-Tipon is often held at Belton's, Tuan Belton's gym over in Bellevue. Half of his fighters are literally like a sambo guy looking over and like, that looks crazy, I'm gonna do that, like, and jumping in and grabbing a spear and sword and like, okay. And relying entirely on a combat sports background, or a Muay Thai guy doing the same thing, right? Like, oh, this is crazy, sure, let's do this. And those guys are used to getting punched in the face. So for them to make that jump into getting hit with a stick, they're like, oh, okay. Like, it's a little bit scary, but okay. They don't have that fear factor because they've been hit and they know how to work hard and they know how to deal with pain. So having those guys as a resource, as being able to move in, I mean, there's some things that have to change, but a lot of it is like, they know their bodies, they know how they move, they know how to work hard. They know footwork, that's an incredible resource if they want it. And there's certainly, you'll get combat sport guys are like, half my club is judo guys. Like, my like old judo guy, like, I can't do that anymore. Like, my back's all jacked up, my shoulders all screwed up. I guess the stick fighting thing looks interesting. Like, I can still play, even, and it's also probably why, the club has probably an average age of like 40. As opposed to the kickboxing gym, which is probably 28, kind of thing. But it allows you to age, as that older martial artist, but still be a competitive, sport outlet.
Yeah, on our side, I think it's a different environment over here. We have our kind of spar event, which is fairly small, but we're continuing on, starting out. I know like Sean Zerger has his event, Throwdowns, which is a very good learning environment as well. So our guys go there, vice versa. But other than that, there's really nothing else here in Toronto in terms of like spar gatherings or gatherings like that around here. So, that's one of the reasons we kind of try to push our event out there, just because there's nothing else. And when there's lack of events like that, you're not breeding the type of environment where we want to bring more people into sparring and full contact things. So yeah, now hopefully things will change. We'll grow more here.
Fighters
fighters
want to fight.
That you have two events is fantastic. But like, you're twice as much as most areas do. I mean, it's most people don't have anything. So we talked about kind of the different groups we had out there. I think, like, say LA, big area, tons of groups. How many like open sparring events? Well, ignore Dog Brothers for right now because that's a big jump. But like, there's a couple tournaments. I saw someone had like a Sparbecue down in San Diego. Like, there may be more, but there's not a lot of open events in LA, like,
know it.
you know,
Yep.
right? Like, talk about a resource out there for martial arts in general. You know, even if you ignore Filipino martial arts, like, we had, we were talking about having Nick Papadakis on, and I know he couldn't make it, but I'd be, how many people does that draw? It's probably not 100. For his tournament, like in that major area, and just that there's I think there's that opportunity out there, and again, it's normalizing these kinds of events, and fortunately, they are becoming more normal. Like, it's and in the United States, it certainly may be different elsewhere, but I think Dog Brothers led the charge on that one. And because I look at all the, like, talk about beat the crap out of cancer. Oh, that's a bunch of Dog Brothers putting that together on. Houston Stick Fighting Academy. I don't know if the original guy was a Dog Brother, but certainly he was inspired by it. You look at the people who attended it, and that was another early open environment. Our group was all core. Our Tipon-Tipon was all cored by Dog Brothers. Was the people who first put it together. Were members of the Dog Brothers. Like, you just had to have enough people to be willing to put it on. And I think people are now looking at it like, oh, we can do this. And again, I think it's becoming more normal. There's so many videos of, Eskrima fencing or Eskrima fighting, and there's lacrosse gloves and a fencing mask seem to be like the new normal. It's probably more normal than the whole WECAF get up. Maybe because we're cheap bastards and can't afford the whole WECAF get up. So
Also might be a Western thing, might be an American Canadian thing, because I don't know a lot of WECAF fighters in the U.S. I know a lot of Dog Brothers, Dog Brother like, and HEMA people in the U.S. Yeah. So one of the things that I could be helpful is if we had a comprehensive list within the community, because we have FMA discussion as a great resource. We also have Aperture Fight Focus as a great resource. So we had a comprehensive list of all the events, when and where, and who the point of contacts were. That'll be really cool. And then we could build from that as a Grand Prix thing of coordinating, like, well, we have these events and we'll just bounce between, because going back to our tournament days back in the late 90s, and 2000s, as we would do the tournament circuit all throughout the NASCA circuit. So why can't FMA do that? And the answer is that we can. We just need to facilitate it and actually make it happen. So an enterprising Filipino martial artist out there, build lists, contact and coordinate people, and let's figure out dates, times, locations, and point of contacts. Put it out there on FMA discussion and Aperture Fight Focus, and we can start building a network that way, so we can actually get some cross-pollination of fighters across America, the Americas. Oh well.
Yeah,
I think we can do it. I really think we can. I honestly think we can. Oh well. What's your thoughts on that there, Justin?
That would be awesome. Unfortunately, Filipino martial artists are also lazy in planning too, right? So we'll probably tell you, hey, there's going to be an event in a couple of weeks or tomorrow or something. No, that would definitely be great. FMA discussion, Aperture, like those are some really good communities. I've also been noticing, which is nice on FMA discussion, more and more smaller groups in Philippines, places in the world are posting more on their sparring. And they're lacrosse or hockey gloves or lacrosse gloves, fencing masks. Like, it's refreshing to see, like, and they're putting themselves out there, right? They're putting themselves people to see. No one ever badmouths when you're trying, when you're sparring like that. But I'm seeing more and more of that, which is really, like, that's really good, because I mean, that's what you got to do, right? Show everyone that you're other places are doing it. It's not just the main places. I was surprised to hear about LA though, like not having that many events. I would have thought that's the next.
There is more.
I'd be curious what Nick says about this, because maybe I'm totally wrong about that. But I like on Reddit, I'm the moderator for the Eskrima forum, and so I see when announcements come up for different events, and Reddit's not necessarily the biggest place in the world for it, but FMA discussion would be. Like, if you're going to have an event, like, you're going to see these things pop up. I don't think I've seen a lot out of California for open Filipino martial arts events. Like, I might be wrong about it, and we'd love to if I'm incorrect about that, but I don't think I've seen it. So
On the other end, though, like if LA's not producing as much as what everyone would have thought, like I'm wondering what other cities are, kind of the underdogs there that are really starting to produce more and more events, because that's where if LA's not, like, there's where else is.
I mean, Stockton used to be the mecca.
Stockton.
Stockton used to be.
But were they doing events, or were they just a bunch of people training? Right,
a bunch of people
right.
training. No.
Events.
Yeah. So and obviously that's the jump, right? If you can get enough people to show up for an event, and sparring days like Tipon-Tipon or some of these other groups are easy because now there's no winners or losers. We don't care. Just show up and learn, right? That's relatively easy, right? We don't have to judge. You just have a center and make sure people aren't doing something stupid. That's the easy one. The tournament and having, like, our group has put on three tournaments or 4 tournaments at this point. That's a lot of work, even for like a single tournament. We're doing a single stick tournament. Last year, it was a single stick and dagger tournament, like 2 different tournaments, right? That's a lot. And so it's a big jump in organization and, quite frankly, professionalism. Like, you don't want people going home like, oh, they couldn't judge. They couldn't, like, I showed up and I waited 4 hours to fight in a dagger tournament in the sun. So there's a professional level that you have to be better at a tournament than you have to do at a sparring day. At a sparring day, it's like, do you have a gym? Okay. Like, did you get people aimed in the general direction? Okay, you're good. And people can be, are fine with that, and they can fight as much and as little as they want. For a tournament, you kind of be on the ball on that one. So,
yep. So starting with the list in point of context would actually be a good place to start. So what I would do, because you two both have annual events, what we can do is we'll list it in the comments, and then I'll start building a list, because as I interview more and more people, I'm learning more about who's doing what, and I can build a comprehensive list through the show, and I can compare notes to other podcasters that I know, and actually we can get something going. Because honestly, if we're not doing something, if we're just talking about it and not actually doing any of it, we're just wasting time. So coming out of this, my goal for myself and with this is, let's build a list and have it listed and have it posted. And we can start with your 2 events. And I'll go with Renee, talk about Beat the Crap Out of Cancer. So that's 3 fight events that I know of. So
and Beat the Crap Out of Cancer isn't one event, right? It's 5 events or 6. Right? It's in multiple cities, kind of in the I don't know when the last one is, but Vancouver, LA, Chicago area, Vermont, I think was one. Like I've seen some in Spain at one point for a different year. So Beat the Crap Out of Cancer isn't just one; it's a bunch.
So I think that's a good start, because from there we can actually, again, build a network, because the network's already there, but we can actually build a network of, here's the events, who's leading them, and eventually it could lead into a comprehensive rule set. Probably won't, but what it could be is just there is a culture of practitioners and athletes and fighters that actually will show up at these different things, and everybody can support each other, and at least we're doing something. And that is what I will challenge and make sure that occurs. So and thank you, both of you, for participating in that, so we can actually be part of the change and get out of the esoteric mysticism, backyard jungle nonsense that is our lineage and heritage. I don't want to bash on our heritage, but there's some cultural features, actually cultural bugs, that need to just go away so we can progress and move better. So is there anything else that we want to put out for today? Because we've been going at for about 2.5 hours, or technically 2.5 hours, but 2 hours live. Do you guys have anything you want to promote out there for the good of the audience for catching on a replay?
Go ahead, Lamont.
I saw a question come up about, like, when's the next Dog Brothers event. Without having looked it up, I believe the next Open is the Canadian. It's in June in Montreal, like June or July. Look it up, Dog Brothers Canada. And then after that would be the Open, which is the 3rd weekend in September, typically in LA, would be the next Open. So we're always looking for fighters. Like, show up. It's a good time.
Awesome. I'll try to find that comment. But yeah, what about you, Justin?
Yeah, we usually run 2 spar events a year. We haven't jotted down the dates yet for this year, but one's usually in springtime and the other one's usually in summer, closer to wintertime. We have a few festivals that are coming up. Taste of Manila, Taste of Philippines, and Brand, which is another Filipino festival. We're going to have a booth there and do demos there as well. Our group, again, we're continuing to grow. We have our main location at Kombat Arts in Mississauga, Ontario. We have a secondary location at Milton Muay Thai, Milton, Ontario, and then we have another location, Neo Jiu-Jitsu, which is in Brampton, Ontario as well. So if you're in any of these areas and you want to train with us, reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram or shoot us a message.
Well, thank you guys for spending 2 hours and sharing your knowledge and insight with me and the audience. Just the gift of your time. I really appreciate these conversations because, I mean, just from a guilty standpoint or a selfish standpoint, this gives me an opportunity to bullshit with 2 very cool people and have a great conversation and learn. So thank you for that. As for everybody else, I mean, they get to hang out with us as well. But really, this is kind of my own guilty little pleasure. So thank you for that.
Hit each other.
Well,
it's fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna drop you 2 out, and yeah, 1 sec. Just hang out in the lobby. All right, everybody. That was a great 2-hour conversation with Lamont and Justin. These are important. We need more of these kind of conversations. So, for my own housekeeping for events, of course, I'm a student of GM Bobby, so he's got quite a few things going on here. Most immediate here's in April, so look for that if you're in the areas. Also, you can find it on his Facebook page and of course on his website. The other thing for me for housekeeping is Water and Steel. Dr. Kelly's Water and Steel is open for registration. I'll be there. So yeah, definitely go register. That's a good time. But if anything else, yeah, sparring's fun. Go hit each other. It's not as scary as you think it is. It helps build resiliency, confidence, all those beautiful things that we're trying to do. And on top of all that, if you have swords, why not use them? So go use them on each other safely, but go do it. And with all that, thanks everybody for hanging out for a couple hours. This will be up on YouTube and Spotify here in about a week. So if all else fails, thank you and have a wonderful day.